Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the all-new 2022 Volkswagen Golf R. In the first part of the video, we're going to go over the new specs for the Golf R, then we're going to get into why this car is important, then we're going to wrap things up with whether or not you should look into buying a Golf R. And with all that being said, let's get into the video. Let's start things off by going over the performance specifications for the new Golf R. First off, it's still going to have a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder that's paired to either a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed dual clutch. The dual clutch is an $800 option, so the manual transmission is actually less expensive, which used to be super common back in the day, but nowadays usually they're the same price. But anyways, aside from that, it's also going to have a really cool torque vectoring all-wheel drive system that'll send different amounts of torque to the front and the rear. It can do a true 50-50 split, and it should just be a really good system overall. It's actually really high-tech stuff. Now, aside from that, it's going to come with 19-inch wheels with summer performance tires, adaptive dampers, and it's going to have much larger brakes as well. Apparently, these are going to be just slightly larger than the previous generation, and what all this does is it actually gives it a significantly quicker time around the Nürburgring compared to the previous generation Golf R. It's actually in the 7-minute range now, which is pretty crazy stuff considering it's a 4-door hatchback. But yeah, that's pretty much everything from a performance perspective. It sounds like it's going to be a fun driving car. Now, if we jump to the interior, first off, I guess this is still kind of on the performance side. We're going to have a bunch of different drive modes. Now, the two most important drive modes is there's going to be a sport mode, obviously, and there's also going to be a drift mode as well, which is pretty cool. They're kind of taking that from the Ford Focus RS. It's still a cool thing to have. And then as for the rest of the interior, it's going to have a large infotainment system. It's going to have a large digital gauge cluster as well, and you guys will see that with the pictures. Napa leather seats. It sounds like it's still going to stay true to the Golf R kind of like ideology, where it is more of a luxury type rally car rather than just being a rally car like what you get with a Civic Type R or a Focus RS. But you do have to pay quite a bit of a premium for this luxury car interior because the starting price is going to be over $44,000, which, yeah, pretty expensive for a 4-door hot hatch with 300 horsepower. And then aside from that, it's still going to be kind of like a sleeper type car on the outside, so it does look different stylistically compared to like a GTI or compared to a regular Golf, but it's not crazy out there with the styling. And so again, it's kind of more on the sleeper side from the exterior, and the interior overall is really nice materials, and again, just more on the luxury side. And then if you guys are wondering, this will be in the US later this year, so expect this to be here fall, winter, depending on all of the things that happen. Again, we have so many issues with parts supplies, so we'll see exactly what happens, but again, expect it to come in sometime this winter. Now let's talk about the importance with this new Golf R. So first off, we are finally getting it back. It's been a few years since we've had a Golf R in the US, and so it's exciting that they are bringing it back. And on top of that, they're staying relatively true to what the Golf R was. It was kind of more on the luxury side of things for a hot hatch, so they're still doing that with the nice luxury interior, the nice Napa leather seats, nice materials on the dash, all that kind of stuff, and then kind of, again, not crazy style on the outside where it's more of a sleeper on the outside. But they're still doing exciting performance stuff. They've obviously increased the performance quite a bit because they wouldn't have been able to get that faster Nürburgring time if they didn't increase the performance figures like they have with the car. More power, better braking, and then also that new torque vectoring all-wheel drive system, which I think is very important because one of the things that I hated about the previous generation Golf R when I drove it was the fact that it felt super front-wheel drive, and it just wasn't all that exciting. Like, it was the most boring hot hatch that I drove out of the bunch because in the same week I drove that, I also drove a Focus RS, and then I also drove the Honda Civic Type R, and I don't think I drove the Evo that week, sadly, and then I did drive the STI as well, all in that one week pretty much. And I know the STI is not technically a hot hatch, but everyone groups it up with those cars even though it's a sedan now. But anyways, after driving all of them that same week, I actually didn't like the Volkswagen Golf R the most because it was just so boring with the drive. It felt really front-wheel drive, like way more than any of the other cars, and the Civic Type R is front-wheel drive, and it felt more front-wheel drive than the Civic Type R, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it just wasn't all that exciting. But with this new drift mode, right, that should add a layer of fun. And then on top of that, with the all-wheel drive system they're having with the torque vector and everything, it sounds like it's going to handle a lot better. The body control is going to feel better, and they are making this car stiffer overall compared to the last Golf R. And so it sounds like it's going to be a more exciting car to drive, which I'm excited about because again, that was my big gripe with that car. Is I was like, this is a nice luxury hatchback, but it's not really a fun car to drive, and it sounds like they're adding some fun to it. Now, the other thing that is, I guess, kind of, and this will kind of bleed into whether or not you should look into buying it, is the pricing is obviously pretty crazy. So starting at $44,000 is really expensive. So they don't sell the Focus RS in the US at all anymore. They don't sell it anymore. They completely discontinued the car. And those cars fully loaded were like $40,000 roughly. And then you look at a Civic Type R and they're like $38,000 fully loaded. Yeah, there was the special edition that was like $45,000, but that was just a special edition. That's not a regular Civic Type R. And then you go over to the Subaru STI and you're like $40,000. This is several $1,000s more expensive than the competitors, and it's not really offering anything extra that the competitors don't have necessarily that I guess buyers would be looking for, right? Yes, it does have a nicer interior with nicer interior materials, but people that buy these cars don't necessarily care about that. They care more about what the performance is of the car, what the driving experience is like. And yes, they have improved those, but at a pretty substantial cost. And so that is definitely a big negative with the Golf R, is just the pricing, right? Starting at over $44,000. It's really expensive for that type of car. But then on top of that, it's more expensive than any of its competitors. Now, yes, we don't have official pricing on the new STI or on the new Civic Type R, but I don't think it's going to be a big jump over what we have now. It's probably going to be maybe a few $100, maybe $1,000 more than what they cost now. I don't foresee it being $4,000 to $5,000 more expensive like what this Golf R costs. And then the other thing that could potentially be going against it is, again, I haven't driven it yet, so I'll have to drive it to obviously confirm this, is if the car is more exciting to drive, right? It has better performance, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's more exciting to drive. If it still has that super front wheel drive feel, and if it's just kind of numb overall like the previous generation Golf R, then I think it's going to be a huge miss, because people are still going to go for the STI and they're still going to go for the Civic Type R over the Golf R, just because those cars are both more exciting to drive. Even though the STI is horrible with its body roll and its current format and everything, it still has a little bit of an extra layer of fun that the Golf R just doesn't have, or at least the previous generation, right? So we'll see what this one is like to drive, but those are kind of, I guess, my worries. And so I guess to cap things off, you should buy this if you're looking for more of a luxury-based hot hatch, but if you want something that's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more thrilling, I can't confirm if it's going to be that yet, but judging by what they did with the last Golf R, probably, again, will be more on the luxury side, less on the fun side, so it'll just depend on what you're looking for. With all that being said, though, that's going to sum things up for our video. If you're stopping for the first time, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe, and I'll see you guys.